If you're a founder of a scaling startup and you have this feeling that everyone in your company is working flat out, and yet the results still aren't what you and your investors are expecting, then this episode is for you. My name is Agnieszka Jurczyk. I work with founders of fast-growing companies who feel they've reached a point where sheer effort and goodwill are no longer enough. In today's episode of Founder to Zero, we'll talk about how to build an accountability system where people actually know what belongs to them and where the word accountability stops being synonymous with blame and starts meaning real influence over outcomes. Let's go, shall we? Chris walks into the conference room, barely keeping his fury in check. Without a word, he tosses a sheet of paper onto the table. Everyone follows it with their eyes as it skids across the surface, each person silently hoping it won't stop in front of them. Legal threat, he says. No warm-up, no framing. He just drops it in the middle of the room like a grenade with the pin pulled. Silence. 9 people around the table. Marketing, sales, ops, product, finance, legal. Everyone staring. Everyone waiting for a punchline that isn't coming. Chris finally grinds out through clenched teeth. 8 customers. 8. Paying 8 different prices for the same tier. A few exhales. Someone fakes a cough. Someone shifts in their chair. Chris taps the page with a nervous staccato. Falcon Industries, he says. The one with 3 new subsidiaries we onboarded last month. They are threatening legal action. Fraudulent misrepresentation. Apparently, they were, and I quote, misled, in particular regarding the price. He scans the faces around the table. Everyone silently avoids his gaze. Right, he sighs, let's say constructive. But his voice doesn't sound constructive. It sounds like the voice of someone who's making a last-ditch effort not to explode. We had to grow ARR before the round, he continues. We all agreed on the pricing changes. Everyone knew what needed to be done, so how the hell did this happen again? What did we miss this time? Marketing folds her arms tightly. We updated the site exactly as agreed. And glances pointedly at sales. Sales raises both hands. Don't look at me. The CRM had the new prices. On time, as agreed. If finance didn't sync the billing, finance turns red. That's not fair. The data was checked from A to Z. Maybe Ops used the old onboarding template again. Ops bristles. We changed the template following exact product specs. Product almost falls off his chair, trying to physically push it back from the table as if he could literally distance himself from any hint of blame. I personally uploaded the files to production. Cross-country consistency is not my scope. The air gets heavier. Chris feels more and more helpless. 9 smart people, all working flat out from morning to night, and still another mess. And what a mess. How is it possible that everyone is grinding this hard and we end up with a legal threat? But it could be different. Now imagine the same situation, but in a different company. Chris's company, version 2.0. A quiet conference room, not a trace of tension, just 2 people. Chris and the Ops PM appointed to own the entire pricing change from start to finish. The PM opens his laptop. No stress, as if no question could catch him off guard. He gets straight to the update. The folks at Falcon Industries have sent us a formal letter about pricing inconsistencies. Chris tenses for a split second, an old reflex, but the PM raises a calm hand. It's just corporate procedure. They have a new head of compliance, and he's clearly trying to make his mark. We checked those inconsistencies with Falcon's finance department. It's purely a timing issue. The subsidiaries were onboarded in different periods, so they fall under different renewal rules. Some require 1 month's notice, some require 3. A few of the older ones have annual inflation indexation only, and the newest ones are already on the updated pricing. Chris nods. It actually makes sense. The PM continues. I've already spoken to sales. We're treating this as an opportunity to consolidate everything into a single enterprise agreement. Cleaner for Falcon, cleaner for us, and slightly higher ARR over time. Chris raises an eyebrow. He wouldn't even have thought of that angle. Falcon's head office is provisionally on board, the PM continues. I've drafted the communication plan for each subsidiary. Ops will send the notices as soon as legal signs off. Finance is ready to update pricing in the next billing cycle. Everything will be aligned from the new quarter. The PM closes his laptop and adds, and if the formal compliance letter arrives, don't worry about the tone. The substance is already dealt with. Chris exhales. It's not relief. It's composure. Before we go further, a quick ask. If what I'm talking about here resonates with where you are right now and you'd like to hear more, hit subscribe. A thumbs up on this video would also mean a lot. In return, I'll keep making more content about how to scale a business without losing your mind along the way. Thank you for every bit of support. You may know that saying, success has many fathers, but failure is an orphan. Success. Everyone wants a selfie with it. Failure? Well, that one always turns up alone. It wanders from meeting to meeting, looking around the room with desperate eyes, begging someone to finally adopt it. And do you know who causes most failures? Lazy people? No. Incompetent people? No. Irresponsible ones? Nope, not them either. Most failures happen because smart, responsible, and hardworking people are grinding away on the wrong things. Everyone is running as fast as they can, just not in the same direction. Marketing optimizes activation. Sales optimizes closing. Ops optimizes onboarding. Finance optimizes cash flow predictability. Product optimizes interface usability. And each of those optimizations effectively cancels everyone else's. And when something eventually falls apart, people do what people have always done. They defend themselves against accusations that haven't even landed yet. They justify their actions. They stare at the floor in silence. They pass the hot potato along, hoping it won't come back. They list everything they did, updated the website, fixed the deck, checked every tab in the spreadsheet, sent hundreds of emails. But ask them, who owns the outcome? And suddenly, silence falls. Or the conversation turns into a philosophical debate. Or everyone looks at the founder. You know that feeling, don't you? That's how startups are built. In the early days, the founder is the universal safety net. If something slips, you catch it. If something breaks, you fix it. If something's unclear, you explain it. And in the meantime, roles evolve, the team grows, the org chart starts looking as if it was shaped by people slowly edging their chairs towards whoever was easiest to trust. Meanwhile, the unwritten rule stays the same. When in doubt, go to the founder. So people don't take accountability for anything, not because they don't want to, but because everything around them quietly whispers that ultimately, as founder, you will own it anyway. And as long as that whisper echoes in the corridors, people will keep working hard and results will keep slipping through the cracks. Before we get into how to change that, let's stop for a moment and look at where those failures actually come from. Failures can have many causes, but in fast-growing startups, the same reasons tend to repeat. Reason one is lack of clarity. Remember delegation 1.0 and 2.0 from episode 3? When people don't have clear context, they don't know the exact goal, they don't know the constraints, and they don't know what success actually looks like, they feel unsafe. So they're very reluctant to take initiative. Not because they're bad employees, but because they're not inside your head and they don't want to look stupid. Some of them genuinely believe that they are helping by not stepping on each other's toes and just doing what they're told. And meanwhile, you're drowning because no one is stepping forward. Which leads us to reason 2. Hovering. People don't take the lead, so you conclude they're just not ready yet. And you flip into helicopter mode. You touch everything, you comment on everything, you hover over everything. So your team naturally assumes it's all yours, even when it long since shouldn't be. Reason 3. The less clarity, the more versions of reality. Everyone works on a fragment of context. Everyone sees only a part of the picture. Everyone works hard on their own interpretation of what needs to be done. And you have so much on your plate that you don't have a moment to check whether what they're doing is still a coherent project or an explosive cocktail of completely mismatched assumptions. Instead of converging, the work starts to diverge, and suddenly, something somewhere catches fire. Reason 4. When everything around you is burning, effort looks like taking accountability for the result. When the house is on fire, you don't look for matches. You don't dive into root cause analysis. Speed is what counts. Action is what counts. So what's visible is effort, sacrifice, heroism. These are the things that are noticed and rewarded. But effort is not the same as taking accountability for a result. Effort says, I sent 5 emails and called them 10 times. Accountability says, I got them to sign the agreement. You see the difference, don't you? Doing things is not the same as getting things done. If you reward effort and activity, people focus on making sure that you see them doing things, not on actually delivering results. Which brings us to reason 5. Under pressure, ambiguity becomes a perfect hiding place. Remember episode 1? Everyone is buried in work, and at the same time, everyone feels that they're not doing enough because whatever they do, the building is still on fire. Pressure, stress, survival mode. When people have more on their plates than they can possibly handle, swimming in murky waters, paradoxically, feels safer. All hands on deck sounds safer because it means I did what I could. Result not delivered? Well, how could it be with all those fires everywhere? I did what I could. Meaning, what I could is enough because there was nothing more that could have been done. Reason 6. Shared accountability. Shared inbox, shared roadmap, shared ownership. Sounds nice, feels collaborative, looks great in the values section on your website. But in reality, the bigger the company gets, the more allergic it becomes to anything shared. Shared accountability equals no accountability. Shared ownership equals no ownership. No ownership equals no outcomes. This is why so many founders keep saying, I have 8 people working on this, and somehow these operational bombs still seem to come out of nowhere. They don't come out of nowhere. They come from this. You are drowning in endless emergencies. Everyone is saving something or someone all day long. Everyone is contributing, but no one is actually organizing the rescue operation, let alone preventing the next one. This is the default mode of almost every growing startup. To move past it, we need to dismantle these causes one by one and consciously rebuild the system. So let's get to it. To start, let me ask you 3 quick questions. When you think about your leadership team, what's the first thing that comes to mind? A. Hardworking people who try their best, or B. Independent managers who know what to do without me. When people report status to you, what does that most often look like? A. They tell you what they did, or B. They focus on how the outcome actually moved as a result of their work. And when something goes wrong, what does that conversation usually look like? A. You call the meeting and people explain themselves, or B. They call the meeting and tell you what they'll change so it doesn't happen again. If you answered A more often, welcome to Accountability 1.0, the model you inherited from your company's early days, the default model every founder inherits. If you answered B more often, congratulations, you're already operating in Accountability 2.0. And if the choice between A and B wasn't obvious and you feel you're somewhere in between, that's fine too. It means the change is already happening. So let's speed it up. You know Accountability 1.0 all too well. The model where who owns this is never even asked because obviously you do. So what is Accountability 2.0? The upgraded model for fast-growing companies where clarity replaces chaos. Accountability goes hand in hand with decision authority, and effort finally starts translating into real outcomes. Let's look at the 4 simple pillars that Accountability 2.0 rests on. Pillar 1, one owner, one person. Not a committee, not a task force, not sales plus product plus ops. One specific person whose name is attached to the outcome. Because when everyone is accountable, in practice, no one is. Accountability starts with one name that doesn't disappear when things get uncomfortable. Pillar 2, real decision authority. Accountability without the right to decide is nothing but a trap. If someone is accountable for an outcome, they must have the ability to influence what leads to that outcome. Priorities, resources, workflows, tools. Otherwise, you're giving someone a mission and tying their hands behind their backs at the same time. Accountability means a specific goal plus the right to decide how to achieve it. There is no or between those 2 things. There is always an and. Pillar 3, an unambiguous definition of success. People can only hit targets they can actually see. Accountability 2.0 means clearly defining what good looks like, what done actually means, how success will be measured, and which trade-offs are acceptable and which are not. Without this, everyone optimizes for what they think matters, which very often is not the same as you think what matters. Clarity about the goal reduces unwanted surprises that slow scaling down. Pillar 4, define boundaries. It's a bit like managing a field. It's easier when it's fenced. A person needs to know what's within their scope and what isn't, which variables they can influence and which they should treat as constants because someone else decides them, which risks they can accept and which are outside of their decision authority and require escalation. Boundaries don't exclude accountability. They enable it. They create a safe space where someone can take ownership without worrying that in order to reach the goal, they'll have to navigate a minefield. When these 4 pillars lock together, you get a system where decisions happen without you. Things move forward faster because people stop losing time fighting through chaos, and accountability finally becomes a force that drives the company forward instead of just a word that everyone avoids. Okay, so let's make it practical. Let's imagine the goal is simple, at least on paper, because in practice it can be painfully hard. Reduce churn from 6% to 5% by the end of the year. And we don't want to push people to work even harder or heroically firefight the customers who are leaving. We want to design the accountability system so that you as founder don't need to get operationally involved. Here's how a scaling CEO executes this goal in Accountability to Zero. Step 1, an unambiguous definition of the goal. Before anything else, we need to make sure that everyone defines churn in the same way, because it's not obvious that it means a percentage of revenue. Seriously. I once worked with a SaaS CEO who reported churn as a percentage of customers, because at that definition, it looked better to investors. True story. So before we move on, one shared definition and making sure that everyone understands it in the same way. Step 2, an owner for the churn management process. In this step, you appoint one person who is accountable for churn from A to Z. But, and this is important, not for rescuing each individual case when a customer clicks cancel subscription or sends notice of termination. They're responsible for churn as a process. Their mandate includes making sure that churn data is actually being collected, because often it isn't, that the data is analyzed systematically, that for every pattern those analyses reveal, an owner is assigned who will actually act on it, that preventive action is taken before a problem becomes churn, and a conscious decision is made about whether it's even worth trying to save cases where a customer has decided to leave. In most companies, this will be the role of the COO. And as I mentioned, the COO doesn't rescue individual churn cases. The COO owns churn management as a process. The COO is the air traffic controller of churn, not the firefighter at each event. Step 3, assign owners for each churn cause. Once the churn data is organized to the point where useful conclusions can be drawn, we can look at what's inside. The data will typically show patterns like missing features, software bugs, support quality issues, onboarding quality issues, pricing problems, or wrong fit customers. Accountability for each could look, for example, like this. Missing features, the CPO, likely delegated to the customer experience lead. Bugs, also CPO, likely delegated to engineering. Support quality, that's COO's area, usually delegated to head of support. Onboarding, also COO's area, that's usually delegated to head of customer success. Pricing, CRO, and wrong fit customers, also CRO. The COO owns the process as a whole. The functional leaders own reducing specific causes of churn within their actual influence. Collaboration, absolutely, but accountability must remain singular. Step 4, clear success criteria. This is where accountability becomes measurable. Back to our example. CPO reduces product gap churn from 1.8% to 1.5% by the end of the year, and within the current quarter delivers fixes for the 3 biggest gaps. Head of support reduces support-related churn from, for example, 1% to 0.8% and implements fixes for the 3 biggest support issues by the end of the quarter. Head of customer success reduces onboarding-related churn from, for example, 0.9 to 0.7, introduces time-to-value reporting by the end of the quarter, and by the end of the year, reduces time-to-value by 20%. CRO reduces wrong fit churn from 1.2 to 0.9, conducts a review of subscription tiers by the end of the month, and redesigns the commission structure so salespeople are rewarded for healthy customers, not just any customers, even ones who will churn after a week. And above all, the COO, as the process owner, makes sure that every significant churn cause has someone accountable for addressing it. If a new pattern keeps appearing and no one acts on it, it's the COO's job to raise it, push it forward, or get accountability assigned. Step 5. Decision rights and boundaries. Here, you make sure that owners have real authority to deliver. For example, CPO can reallocate up to 20% of roadmap capacity to churn fixes, but cannot delay strategic initiatives without your approval. Head of support and head of customer success can redesign workflows, choose tools, hire people, but only within the budget and without outsourcing unless the COO approves. CRO can test pricing and change commission models within the budget, of course, but cannot engage existing customer contracts without your sign-off. This is, of course, just an example. In your company, the optimal accountability split may look somewhat different. One note, though, because support and customer success both report to the COO, it's the COO who sets their boundaries, not you. And an important tip, you don't have to guess the boundaries. Just ask each owner, in an ideal scenario, what would you need to control to feel confident that you can deliver this? They will tell you. It won't be perfect, probably, but it will give you a fast and reasonably realistic starting point from which the conversation can begin. Step 6. Dependencies and interfaces. This step eliminates cases like, I didn't know, nobody told me, that wasn't my scope. In accountability to zero, this rule flips 180 degrees. People can no longer say to the COO, let me know if something important comes up. Instead, the approach becomes, this is my accountability, so it's my responsibility to know everything that affects my outcome. In our example, the COO reports on churn patterns, but the CPO, CRO, and other owners are responsible for staying on top of that data and acting on it without waiting to be chased. Step 7. You check direction, not task completion. If you execute steps 1 through 6 well, you're home. You no longer need to check whether people did what you asked. You look at the outcome and you already know, without going into details. Owners of each area report to you only blockers they can't get past on their own. Cross-functional topics where goals need alignment, because sometimes in practice, goals turn out to conflict each other. It happens. Then significant deviations from the plan and the corrective actions they have taken. No more theater where everyone plays the hero. What was once a fog of opinions, endless crises, and random escalations becomes your company's operating system. Churn stops being a series of fires to put out, and it becomes a process, one that someone specific is actually managing. And you stop being the person everyone runs to whenever something feels off. Unless you hit the barrier that almost every founder hits at some point. Confusing accountability with blame. So let's look at this more closely. Here's the thing nobody tells you. The moment you introduce accountability, some people will hear a completely different word. Not ownership, but blame. And if you don't draw a crystal clear line between these two things from the very beginning, your entire accountability system can collapse under the weight of fear, politics, and very creative storytelling. So let's sort out these concepts. Blame looks backward. Accountability looks forward. Blame asks, who screwed this up? Accountability asks, what do we need to change so this doesn't happen again? Blame encourages awkward silence. Accountability encourages sharing information. Blame hides mistakes. Accountability surfaces root causes. Blame punishes people. Accountability improves systems. And here's the paradox. The more you punish mistakes, the more people hide them. So the same mistakes keep coming back. The moment you clear the environment of blame and focus the conversation on accountability, something remarkable starts to happen. People start talking about what didn't go as planned. They flag risks early, not to convince you that it can't be done, but to think together about how to make it work. They show you the gaps before something falls into them and explodes. They say, I need support before it's too late. Accountability grows in psychological safety, not in fear. So if you want accountability to zero to actually work, you need to make one essential boundary crystal clear. No one gets punished for owning a problem. But people will be held accountable for hiding problems. That one line, very simple, held consistently, changes everything because it rewards action focused on outcomes and collaboration, not action for its own sake and playing only for yourself. The blame game isn't the only thing that can derail accountability to zero. There's one more thing, and only you as CEO can address it. But before I say it directly, let me tell you a short story. An international logistics company. Over 700 clients, including well-known global brands. Nearly 500 full-time employees, plus around 1,000 drivers working as subcontractors. Second floor of headquarters. Same room, desks back-to-back, even the coffee mugs with the company logo are exactly the same. And yet, two completely different worlds. On the right, Robert, Director of Operations, a legend, a hero of 1,000 last-mile rescues. His phone buzzes roughly every 20 seconds. Robert has 4 regional managers under him, each responsible for everything ops in the region. Each calling Robert daily for expense approvals, exceptions, green lights, sometimes quite literally for miracles. Robert is mid-conversation on 5 threads at once, none of them calm. On the left, Tom, Deputy Director of Operations, headhunted from a competitor a few years back. Runs ops everywhere except last mile. Tom is on his weekly status call with his team. The pickups manager, the FTL lead, head of warehousing, head of cross-border operations, the claims person, the returns manager, the fuel surcharge settlements owner. One dashboard on Tom's screen. The conversation is about cost optimization and Black Week preparations 3 months ahead. No alarms being raised, no panic, no one asking for miracles. Suddenly, the door bursts open. The CEO storms in red-faced. Where the hell is Falcon's shipment? They're saying it never left the depot. Robert snaps upright. I'm on it. He slams the laptop shut, cuts off the regional manager mid-sentence, grabs his car keys, and, cursing under his breath, sprints for the stairs. Tom barely looks up from his screen. Hey, FTL, can we help? The FTL guy nods and drops off the call. He's back in under 10 minutes. We have 1 truck with room for this. 30 kilometers extra, but within budget. Slot confirmed, everything sorted. They'll collect by 2. He tried calling Robert to turn him around, but engaged, as always. He sent a text. No reply. So they go back to Black Week planning. By the time Robert screeches into the depot car park, the shipment has been on its way for an hour. Robert will be praised for dedication. he'll get a bonus. He'll go sailing with the CEO on Saturday. A few hours later, in the kitchen, the CFO grumbles, "These late delivery penalties will finish us one day. Last mile is always a disaster. We pay a fortune each month just because we have no reserve subcontractors. FTL must be a simpler game, right?" Tom sips his coffee and smiles politely. He knows this tune. He hears it almost every week. "I'm not sure it's simpler," he says calmly. "Last month, 38% of our urgent FTL schedule changes were triggered by last mile fires." The CFO realizes he's complaining about Robert to his direct subordinate and quickly shifts the tone. Right, yeah, Robert says it's the rates. We don't pay subcontractors enough, so they ghost us the moment someone offers more." And then he pauses. "Hey, if we build the penalty costs into subcontractor rates, we'd eliminate most of this, wouldn't we?" Tom nods. A simple solution. He'd actually implemented it at his previous employer. If they moved fast, it could be done by the end of the quarter. But Tom won't volunteer this time, because last mile is the only area of ops he hasn't yet taken over from his boss. Next week, same second floor, same room at the end of the corridor, same desks back to back, same mugs with the company logo. And yes, the same door bursts open again. Because fires will never stop breaking out until the accountability architecture is built consistently across the whole organization, without exceptions, without special treatment for the boss's family and friends. Because if that consistency isn't there, the client won't notice that 90% of the company works exactly as it should, when the 10% still means their shipment didn't leave the depot on time again. But let's take it steady. Rome wasn't built in a day. Here's your challenge for this week. Pick one area in your company where, despite everyone's efforts, something keeps going sideways. An area with no shortage of hard work, but a distinct shortage of results. Now take a piece of paper or a note on your phone and fill in these 7 points. Point 1. Outcome. What exact result do you need in this area? Just one sentence, one number, no fluff. Point 2. What's needed to achieve it? List 3 to 5 most important elements that must work for that goal to be achievable at all. Point 3. The owner. Who should be accountable for this area from start to finish? Not for executing a list of tasks that you define, but for the overall result. Point 4. Decision authority. What decisions can this person make independently and which require your approval? Point 5. Boundaries. Define clearly what is not within this person's accountability scope. Point 6. Dependencies. Who does this person depend on to deliver the outcome, and who depends on whether they deliver this outcome? Point 7. Success criteria. How will you know that this area is working as it should? Make it smart, specific, measurable, realistic, achievable, time-bound. Done? Good. That is your version. Now, the second part of the challenge. Ask the same person to answer the same 7 questions independently, without seeing your answers. And then compare. Where your answers match, congratulations, you have alignment. Where they don't match, that's exactly where the chaos comes from. The chronic underdelivery, the unmet expectations, that familiar question that keeps coming back. Why does this keep not working? Now, the most important part. Sit down together, have the conversation, close the gaps, clarify the points where your answers diverged. Agree on next steps. And set the timeline for the next update. This week, do this for just one area, but do this thoughtfully. Then leave that area in the hands of its owner and watch from a distance how the way of thinking changes. And how the way of acting changes. In the next episode of Founder to Zero, we'll take on the next scaling bottleneck. Leadership communication. We'll talk about how to speak about genuinely difficult things without losing authority or trust in your team's eyes, but consistently building both. If you'd like to apply the Accountability to Zero model to your own team, or explore what working together might look like, you'll find the contact link below this video. And if this episode was useful, leave a comment, like, share, subscribe. It genuinely helps me make more content like this. That's it for today. As always, take care and see you in the next episode.